They left her one phone call. In a jail cell, bruised and desperate, Maya Thompson dialed the one number she swore never to use unless her life depended on it. "I'm coming," was all her brother said. Sheriff Cole Mercer had built his kingdom on fear. False arrests, planted evidence, broken bodies. His badge made him untouchable, his precinct impenetrable, until he targeted the sister of Darius Thompson. Now the most lethal Delta Force commander in U.S. history stalks through Westbrook like a ghost, dismantling a corrupt system with the same precision he once used against America's enemies. Some men abuse power, others know exactly how to take it away. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow's special episode is one you definitely don't want to miss. The fluorescent lights of the Quick Stop gas station cast harsh shadows across Maya Thompson's face as she pulled her weathered Honda Civic into the last available pump. The digital clock on her dashboard read 11:37 p.m. She sighed, rolling her shoulders to work out the knots that had formed during her 12-hour shift at Memorial Hospital. Her scrub still carried the antiseptic smell of the intensive care unit. "Mom, can I get something to eat?" Elijah asked from the back seat, his voice thick with sleep. At 13, he was all lanky limbs and serious eyes, too mature for his age. "I'm starving," Maya smiled tiredly in the rearview mirror. "Sure, baby. Just something quick, okay? We both need to get home." The night air was cool against her skin as she stepped out to pump gas. She watched Elijah shuffle toward the convenience store, his oversized basketball sneakers dragging slightly across the cracked concrete. A wave of guilt washed over her. Another night he'd spent in the hospital break room doing homework while she worked a double shift. She promised herself that someday, somehow, things would be different. Maya didn't notice the police cruiser that pulled in behind her until its headlights washed over her car, bathing it in a harsh white glow. Something about the way the vehicle idled made her stomach knot. She'd lived in Westbrook long enough to know that being black at a gas station late at night could be trouble, especially in this predominantly white neighborhood. Two officers emerged from the cruiser. The taller one, with a buzz cut and shoulders that strained against his uniform, moved with a purposeful swagger. His nameplate read, Tate. The shorter officer, Wilkins, circled around her car like a shark, his hand resting on his holster. "Evening, ma'am," Deputy Logan Tate said, his tone dripping with false politeness. "That your vehicle?" Maya nodded, keeping her movements slow and deliberate. "Yes, sir. Is something wrong?" Officer Brad Wilkins ran his flashlight across her car, lingering on the dent in the rear bumper and the fading paint. "Matches the description of a stolen vehicle reported earlier tonight." Maya's heart skipped a beat. There must be some mistake. "I've owned this car for 5 years. I have all the documentation. I'm gonna need to see your license, registration, and proof of ownership right now," Tate demanded, cutting her off. His hand twitched near his weapon. "Of course," Maya said, trying to keep her voice steady. "My purse is inside the car. May I reach for it?" Tate's eyes narrowed. Slowly, as Maya leaned into her car, she could see Elijah returning from the store, a bag of chips and a soda in his hands. His eyes widened at the sight of the police officers. "Mom," he called out, his voice cracking with sudden fear. "It's okay, Elijah," Maya assured him, though the tremor in her voice betrayed her. "The officers just need to see my registration. Everything's fine." Wilkins turned sharply toward Elijah. "Stay right where you are, kid." Maya retrieved her wallet and registration, hands trembling slightly as she handed them to Tate. "Here you go, sir. Everything's in order." Tate barely glanced at the documents before handing them to Wilkins. "This doesn't prove anything. This could all be falsified." Confusion and fear mingled in Maya's chest. "What? No, those are genuine." "Step away from the vehicle," Tate ordered, his voice hardening. "Mom," Elijah cried out, dropping his snacks and pulling his phone from his pocket. His fingers flew across the screen, activating the camera. Wilkins noticed immediately. "Hey." "What do you think you're doing?" He strode toward Elijah, his face twisted with anger. "Leave him alone," Maya shouted, taking a step forward. "He's just a child." Tate grabbed Maya's arm, wrenching it behind her back. "I said step away from the vehicle." "You're hurting me," Maya gasped, tears springing to her eyes. Meanwhile, Wilkins reached Elijah, snatching the phone from his hands. "Filming police officers? That's obstruction of justice, kid." "No, it's not," Elijah protested, his voice breaking. "It's my right," Wilkins sneered, then deliberately dropped the phone, crushing it beneath his boot with a sickening crack. Oops. Small crowd had begun to gather around the pumps. A middle-aged white woman stepped forward. "Excuse me, officers, is this really necessary? She was just getting gas." "Ma'am, stay back. This is police business," Wilkins barked. "Anyone interfering will be arrested for obstruction." Another bystander, a young black man in a business suit, had his phone out recording. Wilkins pointed at him menacingly. "You want to spend the night in lockup too?" The man hesitated but kept filming. "This isn't right." "Last warning," Wilkins growled, starting toward him. The man reluctantly lowered his phone but didn't put it away completely. Tate had Maya pressed against her car now, roughly patting her down. "What's in your pockets? Any weapons? Drugs?" "Nothing," Maya cried. "I'm a nurse. I was just getting off my shift." "Sure you are," Tate scoffed. "And I'm the Queen of England." Maya struggled to maintain her composure. "Please, my son is watching. Just check my ID. I work at Memorial." "Stop resisting," Tate shouted, though Maya had gone completely still. "I'm not—" Before she could finish, Tate grabbed her wrists and snapped handcuffs on them, tightening them until they bit into her skin. He spun her around, his face inches from hers. "You people never learn, do you?" The casual racism in his words hit Maya like a physical blow. "What did I do wrong? Please, just tell me what I'm being arrested for." Instead of answering, Tate grabbed her arm and began marching her toward the police cruiser. Maya looked back desperately at Elijah, who stood frozen in shock, tears streaming down his face. "Elijah," she called out. "Call Ms. Denise. Tell her." What happened? Ms. Denise was their neighbor, a retired teacher who often watched Elijah when Maya worked late. If anyone could help right now, it would be her. "Shut up," Tate hissed, tightening his grip on her arm. A black SUV pulled into the gas station, its tires crunching over the broken glass of Elijah's phone. The driver's side door opened, and Sheriff Cole Mercer stepped out. Tall and imposing with steel gray hair and cold blue eyes, he surveyed the scene with detached interest. "What's the situation, Deputy?" Mercer asked, his voice deceptively calm. "Suspected. Car thief, sir," Tate replied. "Resisted arrest and her kid tried to interfere." Mercer looked Maya up and down, his lip curling slightly. "Is that right?" He didn't wait for her response before turning to his deputies. "You know what to do." The words sent a chill down Maya's spine. There was something practiced about this exchange, as if they'd done this many times before. "Please," Maya begged, looking directly at Mercer. "My son should have raised him to respect law enforcement," Mercer cut in coldly. He nodded to Wilkins. "Get her out of here." Wilkins shoved Maya into the back seat of the cruiser, her head hitting the doorframe. Pain exploded behind her eyes, but she bit back a cry, unwilling to give them the satisfaction. The last thing she saw before the door slammed shut was Elijah, her beautiful boy standing alone in the garish light of the gas station, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Then they were speeding away, the gas station receding in the distance, along with any sense of justice or safety Maya had ever felt in this town. Inside the cruiser, Maya tried to control her breathing. She'd heard stories about Westbrook's police department, whispered warnings at church, in the break room at the hospital, at her son's school. Black folks disappearing into the system for days over traffic violations, emerging with fabricated charges, beaten, broken. She'd always been careful, always kept her head down, but careful hadn't been enough. Now she was caught in the machine, and the fear that gripped her wasn't just for herself, but for Elijah, alone at the gas station, terrified. What would happen to him if something happened to her? As the cruiser sped through the empty streets, Tate glanced at her in the rearview mirror, his eyes gleaming with something that made her blood run cold. "Hope you didn't have plans for the next few days," he said, chuckling. "Sheriff Mercer likes to make sure our guests get the full Westbrook experience." Maya closed her eyes, thinking of her brother Darius. Halfway across the world, probably, deep in some classified mission. She hadn't seen him in almost 2 years, their lives having diverged so dramatically. But right now she would give anything to hear his calm, steady voice telling her everything would be okay. The cruiser turned down a dark street, away from the main road, away from the police station Maya knew should be their destination. Her heart hammered against her ribs. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Wilkins turned in his seat, grinning. "The scenic route. Sheriff likes to process special cases personally." Maya pressed herself against the door. As far from them as the handcuffs would allow, she was no longer just afraid. She was terrified. The precinct building loomed ahead, a squat, brutalist structure with few windows and harsh floodlights that created more shadows than they banished. As the cruiser pulled into the rear entrance, away from the public-facing front doors, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that she was being swallowed whole by something monstrous and hungry. The booking area of the Westbrook Police Department reeked of bleach, sweat, and despair. Maya Thompson stood shivering under the fluorescent lights, her handcuffs digging into her wrists as Officer Brad Wilkins roughly shoved her forward. "Name!" barked the booking officer, a heavy-set woman with disinterested eyes who didn't bother looking up from her computer. "Maya Thompson," she answered, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'm a registered nurse at Memorial Hospital. There's been a mistake." "Save it," Wilkins cut in, shoving her shoulder. "She was caught stealing a vehicle at the Quick Stop on Elmwood." "That's not true," Maya protested. "It's my car. I have proof." "And assaulting an officer," Wilkins added, raising his voice over hers. "Resisting arrest." The booking officer sighed as though this was routine, typing the information without question. "Empty your pockets." Maya had nothing but her hospital ID badge, her wallet, and a pack of gum. As she placed them on the counter, Wilkins picked up her wallet, leafing through it. "Well, what do we have here?" he said, a cruel smile spreading across his face as he pulled out a small plastic bag filled with white powder. "Looks like we've got possession charges, too." Maya's blood ran cold. "That's not mine. You planted that." Wilkins shrugged. "Guess that explains the erratic behavior, huh? High as a kite." He turned to the booking officer. "Add narcotics possession to the charges." The booking officer nodded, adding it to the file without hesitation, as if planting evidence was just another Tuesday night at the Westbrook PD. "I want to call my lawyer," Maya demanded, her voice hoarse with fear and anger. "I have rights." Wilkins laughed. "Rights? That's cute. You'll get your phone call when we decide you get your phone call." After being fingerprinted and photographed, they led Maya down a long corridor. The cells they passed were packed with women, many of them black or Latina, most looking resigned to their fate. Finally, they reached a holding cell at the end, already cramped with at least 15 women in a space meant for 8. The door clanged shut behind her, the sound reverberating through her bones like a death knell. Maya stood just inside, taking in the scene. The single toilet in the corner with no privacy screen, the uncomfortable metal benches, the overwhelming smell of unwashed bodies and desperation. "First time?" asked a voice to her right. Maya turned to see a woman about her age with tired eyes and a fading bruise on her cheekbone. "I shouldn't be here at all," Maya said, wrapping her arms around herself. "They planted drugs on me." The woman nodded grimly. "Classic Westbrook special. I'm Janine. Been here 3 weeks waiting for a hearing that keeps getting rescheduled." "3 weeks?" Maya whispered, horrified. "For what?" "Supposedly I had a broken taillight. Then they claimed I had outstanding warrants, then unpaid tickets. They just keep adding charges." Janine moved closer, lowering her voice. "Look, this precinct is notorious. They target black folks, plant evidence, falsify reports. Sheriff Mercer runs this county like his personal fiefdom." A chill ran down Maya's spine. "My son. He's alone at the gas station. He's only 13. Janine squeezed her hand. "Someone will look out for him. The community knows what these cops are like." Maya hoped she was right. She thought of Elijah, scared and alone, and felt tears threatening to spill over. She blinked them back furiously, unwilling to show weakness in this place where vulnerability could be weaponized against her. Hours passed in a haze of anxiety and discomfort. Some women slept, huddled against each other on the cold floor. Others paced. Maya sat on a small patch of bench, her mind racing between worry for Elijah and terror at her situation. Around 3 a.m., the cell door clanged open. Deputy Logan Tate stood there, his face twisted in a mocking grin. "Thompson, let's go." Maya stood up, her legs stiff. "Where?" "Processing," Tate said vaguely. "Move it." As she passed Janine, the woman whispered, "Stay strong, don't sign anything." Tate led Maya down several corridors, away from the main holding area. The administrative section of the precinct was eerily quiet this time of night. He opened a door to a small windowless room with a single table and 2 chairs. "In," he ordered. Maya stepped inside, her heart pounding. The room had that sterile, impersonal quality of places designed to break people. "I want my phone call," she said, summoning courage from somewhere deep inside. "It's my right." Tate chuckled, closing the door behind them. "You'll get your call when I say you get your call." Maya stood her ground. "I'm a nurse. I know my rights. I demand to call." The blow came without warning, a sharp jab to her stomach that knocked the wind from her lungs. Maya doubled over, gasping. "Learn your place," Tate hissed, his face inches from hers. "In here, you have no rights. You have no voice. You are nothing." Tears of pain and rage blurred her vision. "You won't get away with this." Tate straightened up, adjusting his uniform with casual indifference. "Thousands before you said the same thing. Guess what? We always do." The door opened, and Sheriff Cole Mercer walked in, his presence filling the small room. He carried a manila folder, which he dropped on the table before sitting down. "Ms. Thompson," he said, his voice silky smooth, dangerous. "Have a seat." Maya remained standing, one arm still cradling her abdomen. "I want to call my lawyer, and I need to know what happened to my son." Mercer smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Your son is fine. Child Services picked him up." The casual way he delivered this devastating news made Maya's knees buckle. She gripped the chair to steady herself. "Child Services?" she whispered. "But why? He has a neighbor." "Abandoned minor," Mercer said with a shrug. "Standard procedure when a parent is arrested on drug charges." "Drug charges that are completely fabricated," Maya exploded. "You planted that bag." Mercer's smile faded. "Careful, Ms. Thompson. Making false accusations against officers can result in additional charges." He opened the folder. "You're already facing quite a list. Car theft, resisting arrest, assaulting an officer, possession of a controlled substance." "None of that is true," Maya said through gritted teeth. "And now," Mercer continued as if she hadn't spoken, "we have reason to believe there may be a firearm in your stolen vehicle." Terror gripped Maya. "What? There's no gun in my car." "Not yet," Mercer agreed mildly, then shared a knowing look with Tate. "But evidence has a way of turning up, doesn't it, Deputy?" Tate smirked. "Indeed it does, Sheriff." Maya realized with sickening clarity what was happening. They were systematically building a case that could send her away for years, maybe decades. And they were doing it right in front of her, confident there was nothing she could do to stop them. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mercer leaned forward, his pale eyes cold and lifeless. "Consider it a reminder of how things work in Westbrook. Some folks need reminding from time to time." The racial undertone was unmistakable. Maya felt rage boiling up inside her, threatening to overflow. "My brother will not help you," Mercer finished for her. "No one will. That's the point, Ms. Thompson." He stood up, straightening his uniform. "Get comfortable. You're going to be with us for a while." As Mercer headed for the door, he paused. "Oh, and if you keep making trouble, we might need to reevaluate your son's situation. Troubled kids from broken homes often end up in the system for years. Would be a shame." The threat hung in the air like poison. Maya felt her breath catch in her throat. "Think about that before you decide how cooperative you want to be," Mercer said, then nodded to Tate. Take her back to holding. As Tate grabbed her arm, Maya's mind raced. She needed help, but who could stand against an entire corrupt police department? Then she remembered. There was one person who could. One person who had faced worse odds, in far more dangerous places. Her brother, Darius. Tate shoved her back toward the holding cells, but they passed a different corridor, one she hadn't seen before. From somewhere down that hallway came a man's scream, followed by a dull thud and silence. Maya stiffened. Tate noticed and smiled, a predatory gleam in his eyes. Sounds like Officer Wilkins is conducting an interview. Horror crawled up Maya's spine. That's torture. That's Westbrook justice, Tate corrected, shoving her forward again. Like I said, get comfortable. You're going to be here a while. When they returned to the holding cell, the women inside looked at Maya with a mixture of sympathy and resignation. They recognized the haunted look in her eyes, having experienced their own versions of Westbrook's processing. Janine made room for her on the bench. You okay? Maya shook her head, unable to speak. The pain in her stomach had subsided to a dull ache, but the fear for her son and her future threatened to overwhelm her. They're trying to break you, Janine whispered. Don't let them. My son, Maya managed, her voice cracking. They said child services took him. A woman across the cell spoke up. They say that to everyone with kids. Half the time it's a lie to make you panic and cooperate. And the other half? Maya asked. The woman looked away. Then you better pray. Someone on the outside is looking out for them. As the night wore on, Maya dozed fitfully, startling awake at every sound. Around dawn, the cell door opened again. This time it was a disheveled man in a rumpled suit, carrying a worn briefcase. Thompson? He called out, sounding bored. I'm Kevin Burris, public defender. Maya stood up. I didn't ask for a public defender. I want to call my own lawyer. Burris sighed, checking his watch. Look, I've got 15 minutes before another case. You want my help or not? Reluctantly, Maya followed him to a small conference room. Unlike the interrogation room from earlier, this one had a window, though it was covered with bars and looked out onto a brick wall. Burris didn't bother with pleasantries. You're in a world of trouble, Ms. Thompson. Car theft, drug possession, resisting arrest. None of that is true, Maya interrupted. They planted evidence, fabricated charges. I was just getting gas with my son. Burris barely glanced up from his notes. Yeah, everyone says that. Because it happens, Maya insisted. Ask anyone in that cell. This precinct targets black citizens, plants evidence. Save it for someone who can do something about it. Burris, cut in. Here's what I can offer. Plead guilty to lesser charges, disorderly conduct and possession of a small amount, and they'll drop the car theft. You'll do 6 months, maybe less. Maya stared at him, incredulous. Plead guilty to crimes I didn't commit? Absolutely not. Burris finally looked at her, his expression a mixture of pity and exasperation. Ms. Thompson, let me be clear. It doesn't matter what actually happened. What matters is what they say happened, and they say you're guilty. But there were witnesses. People at the gas station saw everything. And how many of them will testify against the police in this town? Burris shook his head. Be realistic. No judge in Westbrook is going to believe you over Sheriff Mercer and his deputies. Maya felt tears of frustration burning her eyes. So I'm just supposed to accept this? Let them destroy my life, take my son? I'm not saying it's fair, Burris said, packing up his papers. I'm saying it's reality. As he stood to leave, Maya realized he hadn't asked a single substantive question about her case. He hadn't even pretended to consider her innocence. You're working with them, aren't you? She asked quietly. Burris paused at the door. For a moment, something like shame flickered across his face. Everyone works with them, Ms. Thompson. That's how this town survives. He checked his watch again. Think about that plea deal. It's the best you're going to get. After he left, a guard escorted Maya back to the holding cell. She felt numb, the full weight of her situation pressing down on her. No one was coming to save her. No one was fighting for justice. Except there was one person. One call she hadn't made yet. As daylight filtered through the high, barred windows of the holding cell, Maya thought of her brother Darius. The last time they'd spoken had been months ago, a brief call from some classified location, his voice tired but strong. He'd always been the warrior of the family, the protector. While she had chosen healing as her path, he had chosen to fight, and right now she needed a fighter. An officer appeared at the cell door around 8 a.m. Thompson. Phone call. Maya stood up, heart pounding. This was it. Her one chance. The officer led her to a row of payphones mounted on the wall, each with a plastic divider offering minimal privacy. 5 minutes, he said, then stepped back. Just far enough to give the illusion of not listening. Maya's fingers trembled as she dialed the number. Not a regular phone number, but a secure line only a handful of people in the world had access to. A number Darius had given her years ago with strict instructions. Only use this if your life depends on it. Today she was certain it did. The line rang once, twice, 3 times. Maya held her breath, praying he would answer. Then, Thompson, came the calm, measured voice of her brother. Just the sound of it made tears spring to her eyes. Darius, she whispered, voice cracking. It's Maya. I need help. There was a brief pause. Then his tone shifted, becoming sharper, more focused. Tell me. As quickly and quietly as she could, Maya explained what had happened. The gas station, the false arrest, the planted evidence, the threats against Elijah. With each word, she could sense her brother's silent rage building on the other end of the line. Who did this to you? Darius asked, his voice now terrifyingly calm. Sheriff Cole Mercer, Deputy Logan Tate, Officer Brad Wilkins. Westbrook Police Department. Maya recited the names, each one bitter on her tongue. They're going to frame me, Darius. They're going to take Elijah. I don't know what to do. Another pause, longer this time. When Darius spoke again, his voice had taken on a quality Maya had heard only once before, after their parents' funeral, when he'd promised her nothing would ever harm her again. Stay strong, he said. I'm coming. Just those words, so simple, so certain, made Maya's knees weak with relief. Darius wasn't just her brother. He was a Delta Force commander, a man who had faced impossible odds and prevailed. What should I do until then? She asked, wiping away tears. Resist nothing, say nothing, sign nothing. His instructions came rapid fire, precise. Don't antagonize them. Don't give them any reason to hurt you. Just wait. How long? 24 hours. No more. There was steel in his voice. And Maya? This ends today. The line went dead, but Maya didn't immediately hang up. She held the receiver against her ear, drawing strength from the echo of her brother's promise. When she finally turned around, she was surprised to see Sheriff Mercer standing behind her, his eyes narrowed in suspicion. Productive call? He asked, his tone deceptively light. Maya met his gaze steadily, something she wouldn't have dared just minutes ago. Just letting someone know where I am. Mercer studied her face, noticing the subtle change in her demeanor, the fear still present, but now tempered by something else, something like hope. It clearly disturbed him. Who exactly did you call, Ms. Thompson? Maya thought of her brother, of the storm that was now heading straight for Sheriff Mercer and his corrupt kingdom. Part of her wanted to warn him, to see the fear in his eyes for a change. But Darius had taught her better than that. Never let the enemy see you coming, so she simply said, my family, and left it at that. Mercer's eyes narrowed further, but he couldn't quite pinpoint what had changed. He gestured to the guard. Take her back to holding, and watch her. As Maya was led away, she caught a glimpse of uncertainty on Mercer's face. He sensed something was different but couldn't identify the threat. That was Darius's first lesson in warfare. The most dangerous enemy is the one you don't see coming until it's too late. For the first time since this nightmare began, Maya allowed herself to feel something beyond fear and despair. It was small, fragile, but undeniable. Hope. In her mind, she could already hear the approaching footsteps of retribution. They were coming for Mercer and his corrupt officers, Not with sirens and flashing lights, but silently, efficiently, the way her brother had been trained to operate in the most dangerous places on Earth. And Westbrook, for all its cruelty and corruption, had just become the most dangerous place for Sheriff Cole Mercer. As she settled back on the hard bench in the holding cell, Maya closed her eyes, picturing Elijah's face. "Hold on, baby," she whispered to herself. "Uncle Darius is coming." Maya Thompson sat in the holding cell, her back against the cold concrete wall. The chaos of the cell, women arguing, crying, or staring into space with hollow eyes, seemed distant now. Her call to Darius had changed everything. She was no longer alone in this fight. The cell door clanged open, and Officer Wilkins appeared, his face twisted in its usual sneer. "Thompson, get up." Maya rose silently, following Darius's advice. "Resist nothing, say nothing, sign nothing." "Sheriff wants you transferred," Wilkins said, roughly grabbing her arm. "Seems you've become a problem." Maya stayed silent as he led her through the corridors. Mercer was panicking. He didn't know who Darius was yet, but he had sensed something wasn't right. Predators like him could smell change in the air. In the processing area, Sheriff Mercer waited, thumbs hooked in his belt loops, attempting to project casual authority. But Maya noticed a tightness around his eyes that hadn't been there before. "Ms. Thompson," he said, his voice deliberately measured. "There's been a change of plans. You're being transferred to county pending your arraignment." Maya met his gaze steadily. "Why?" Mercer's jaw tightened at her newfound composure. "Overcrowding. Nothing personal." It was a lie, and they both knew it. The holding cells at Westbrook, PD, were never too full to keep someone Mercer wanted to torment personally. "Who did you call?" Mercer asked abruptly, studying her face. "My brother," Maya answered simply. "And who exactly is your brother?" Maya thought about how to answer. Darius had always kept his military career private. His specific role in Delta Force was classified. But right now, she wanted Mercer to feel something he made others feel every day. Fear. "Someone who doesn't like bullies," she replied. Mercer stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Listen carefully. I don't know who you think is coming to save you, but no one crosses me in my county. No one." Maya said nothing, but her silence clearly unsettled him more than any defiance could have. "Get her ready for transport." Mercer barked at Wilkins, then stalked away, his boots echoing down the corridor. As Wilkins processed her transfer paperwork, the precinct doors burst open. A woman in her 60s with silver-streaked hair marched in, dragging a reluctant Elijah by the hand. "Ms. Denise," Maya gasped, relief flooding through her at the sight of her son. Denise Williams, Maya's neighbor and Elijah's occasional caretaker, was a retired school principal with a backbone of steel. She headed straight for the front desk. "I'm here about Maya Thompson," she announced, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had wrangled unruly teenagers for 30 years. "And to report that this child was abandoned at a gas station by your officers, which is against every procedure in the book." "Ma'am, we're not at liberty to discuss," the desk sergeant began. "I'm not asking you to discuss anything," Denise cut him off. "I'm telling you that I have temporary guardianship papers for this child, signed by his mother, and I'm here to inform you that he was left alone at a gas station at midnight. Or would you prefer I call the state attorney general's office to discuss it?" The desk sergeant's face paled. "Wait here," he said, then disappeared down a hallway. Elijah spotted his mother and broke away from Denise, running to her. "Mom." Maya wanted nothing more than to hold him, but her handcuffs prevented it. She crouched down instead, meeting him at eye level. "Are you okay, baby?" Elijah nodded, though his eyes were red-rimmed from crying. Miss Denise came to the gas station. Someone called her. "The community looks out for its own," Denise said, joining them. "That young man in the suit who was filming, he recognized Elijah from the community center basketball league, called me right away." Maya felt a surge of gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. Denise squeezed her shoulder. "What are they charging you with?" Before Maya could answer, Sheriff Mercer emerged from a side door, his face stormy. "Ms. Williams," he said, recognizing the retired principal. This is a restricted area. Sheriff Mercer, Denise replied coldly. Still running things like your personal fiefdom, I see. Mercer's smile was tight. Ms. Thompson is being transferred to county. She's facing serious charges. Fabricated charges, Denise responded. Just like the ones you tried to pin on my nephew last year. Just like the ones you've been using to terrorize this community for a decade. Mercer's face darkened. Be careful, Denise. Even respected retired principals can find themselves on the wrong side of the law. Denise didn't flinch. Is that a threat, Sheriff? Because I keep excellent records. Would you like me to share them with the State Attorney General, or perhaps the FBI? For a moment, tension crackled in the air. Then Mercer forced a laugh. Always. The fighter, Denise. But this isn't your battle. He nodded to Wilkins. Finish processing the prisoner. Denise turned to Maya. Don't worry about Elijah. He'll stay with me until you're released, and you will be released. She said this last part while staring directly at Mercer. Maya knelt to hug Elijah as best she could with her restrained hands. Be good for Ms. Denise, okay? I'll be home soon. Promise? Elijah asked, his voice small. Promise, Maya said firmly. And remember what I always tell you. Thompson family never breaks a promise, Elijah finished, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. As Wilkins led Maya away, she looked back at Denise and Elijah standing together, a small island of love and protection in a sea of corruption. She mouthed, "Thank you," to Denise, who nodded firmly in response. Wilkins shoved Maya toward the exit. Your neighborhood watchdog won't help you where you're going. She already has, Maya replied. Elijah was safe. That was what mattered most. 3,000 miles away, Commander Darius Thompson stood in a secure communications room at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. His face, normally impassive, was carved in granite as he stared at the satellite imagery of Westbrook displayed on multiple screens. After Maya's call, he'd cut short a training exercise and flown directly back to U.S. soil, pulling strings at the highest levels to make it happen within hours. No one questioned his urgency. Darius Thompson was a legend in Special Forces circles, a man whose missions were classified so deeply that most people in the Pentagon didn't know the half of what he'd accomplished. What do we have? He asked. The room. Carter Reed, Darius's second-in-command and closest friend, stepped forward. A former intelligence officer with contacts throughout the government, Reed had assembled a makeshift team in record time. Westbrook Police Department, rural jurisdiction, overseen by Sheriff Cole Mercer for the past 15 years, Reed began, bringing up personnel files on one screen. Mercer runs the department like a personal fiefdom. Complaints of corruption, brutality, and racial profiling have been filed repeatedly, but they disappear in the system. Political connections? Darius asked. Strong ties to State Senator James Whitaker and Judge Richard Palmer, who oversees most criminal cases in the county, answered Lisa Nguyen, a cybersecurity expert who had served with Darius on 3 classified missions. The 3 of them went to college together, belonged to the same fraternity. Financial situation? Marcus Green, a forensic accountant who had helped Darius track terrorist financing across borders, pointed to another screen. Sheriff's Department budget shows significant discrepancies. Mercer lives well beyond his official salary, vacation homes, boats, expensive cars. We're tracing the money now, but early indicators suggest ties to drug trafficking along the I-95 corridor. Darius absorbed the information, his mind already formulating a strategy. What about my sister and nephew? Maya is being transferred to county jail, Reed said. Our contact at the State Attorney General's office confirms it's unusual. Westbrook, PD typically holds suspects for at least 48 hours before transfer. He's spooked, Darius observed. Good. Your nephew is with a neighbor, Denise Williams, retired school principal, clean record, respected in the community, Nguyen added. She confronted Mercer at the precinct and threatened to go to the state. AG. That's likely what prompted the transfer. Darius nodded, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. Maya always did have good taste in friends. He stepped closer to the screens, studying the satellite imagery of Westbrook. It wasn't so different from other battlefields he'd analyzed before operations. Terrain, infrastructure, choke points, potential escape routes. The difference was that this time, the enemy wasn't a terrorist cell or hostile force. It was people who had sworn to uphold the law. "I need everything," Darius said quietly. "Every case where Mercer's department has falsified evidence, every person wrongfully arrested, every victim who was too afraid to speak up, every financial transaction, every political favor, every dirty secret." The room fell silent, the gravity of what he was proposing settling over them. This wasn't a sanctioned mission. This was personal. Reed voiced what everyone was thinking. "Darius, you're talking about taking down an entire police department. If this goes sideways, it won't." Darius cut him off. "I'm not asking anyone here to risk their career. This is my fight, my sister, my responsibility." "Like hell it is," Green responded immediately. "We're a team," Nguyen nodded. "Always have been. Just tell us the plan." Darius looked around at the faces of people who had followed him into the most dangerous situations imaginable, people who trusted him with their lives. He felt a surge of gratitude that momentarily pushed aside his cold rage. "Two-phase operation," he said decisively. "Phase 1, extract Maya from County, secure her and Elijah at a safe location. Phase 2, systematically dismantle Mercer's entire operation, gather evidence, identify allies in federal law enforcement, and ensure this can never happen again." Reed studied his friend's face. "And if Mercer or his deputies resist?" Darius's expression hardened. "Then they'll learn why some of the most dangerous people in the world call me sir." Maya sat in the back of the transport van, hands cuffed to the bench, swaying with each turn. Deputy Tate drove while Wilkins rode shotgun, both men unusually quiet. Maya suspected her call, and Denise's appearance had upset their routine. Through the small mesh-covered window, Maya could see they were taking a back road rather than the main highway that would lead to County. Her heart rate quickened. This wasn't a routine transfer. "Where are we going?" she asked, breaking her silence. Tate glanced in the rearview mirror, his eyes cold. Taking the scenic route, Maya thought quickly. If they were planning to harm her, this would be their opportunity, away from witnesses, away from cameras. She needed to stay calm, think clearly. "A lot of people know where I am," she said evenly. "Ms. Williams, my son, the lawyer." Wilkins turned in his seat. "That public defender? He works for us, sweetheart. As for the old lady and your kid, who's going to believe them over sworn officers?" The van turned onto a dirt road, heading into a wooded area. Maya felt fear rising in her throat but pushed it down. Panic wouldn't help her now. Suddenly, the radio crackled to life. "Unit 12, this is dispatch." Tate grabbed the radio. "This is Unit 12. Sheriff Mercer wants you to divert to the station immediately. We have a situation." Tate and Wilkins exchanged glances. "What kind of situation?" "Sheriff says to secure the prisoner and return. Now." Tate swore under his breath, then made a sharp U-turn, sending Maya sliding across the bench. "Guess your scenic tour will have to wait," Maya said quietly. Wilkins turned again, his face ugly with anger. "Don't get comfortable, this isn't over." The radio crackled again. "All units, be advised. Federal agents have arrived at the courthouse, asking questions about the Thompson arrest. Sheriff wants all hands at the station." Maya felt a surge of hope. Darius was moving faster than she'd expected. Whatever connections he'd activated were already working. Tate slammed his palm against the steering wheel. "Federal agents? What the hell is going on?" Wilkins looked back at Maya with newfound wariness. "Who exactly is your brother?" Maya met his gaze steadily. "Someone you really shouldn't have made angry. The Westbrook Police Department was in chaos when the transport van arrived. Officers moved frantically around the building, shredding documents, wiping computers, and clearing out evidence lockers. Sheriff Mercer stood in the center of the bullpen, barking orders, his face flushed with anger and fear. As Tate and Wilkins escorted Maya inside, Mercer stormed over. What part of transfer her to County was unclear. "Dispatch called us back," Tate explained. Said you wanted all hands here. Because the feds are crawling all over the courthouse, Mercer hissed. They're asking questions about her. He jabbed a finger toward Maya. What did you do? Maya said nothing, but she couldn't keep the slight smile from her face. Mercer grabbed her arm, fingers digging in painfully. Who is your brother? Before Maya could answer, the precinct doors swung open. A tall man in an impeccable suit walked in, flanked by 2 agents wearing FBI windbreakers. The man moved with quiet authority, his gaze taking in the chaotic scene. With clinical detachment, Sheriff Cole Mercer? He asked, though it wasn't really a question. Mercer released Maya's arm, straightening his uniform. That's right. And you are? Special Agent James Wilson, FBI. He presented his credentials. We're here about Maya Thompson. Mercer attempted a casual smile. Just a routine arrest, Agent Wilson. In fact, we were transferring her to county for processing. Wilson's expression remained neutral. In a van that took a detour into Wagner Woods. Interesting route to the county jail. Mercer's facade slipped for just a moment, his eyes darting to Tate and Wilkins. My deputies must have gotten turned, around, new to the area. Both of them? With a combined 23 years on the force? Wilson consulted a file in his hand. Fascinating. Maya watched the exchange with growing hope. This wasn't just any FBI agent. This was someone Darius had sent, someone prepared. Wilson turned to Maya. Miss Thompson, are you all right? Yes, sir, she answered, lifting her cuffed hands. Though I'd be better without these. Remove the restraints, Wilson ordered. Mercer stepped forward. Now wait a minute. She's facing serious charges. Fabricated. Charges, Wilson interrupted. We have witness statements from the gas station, including video evidence that mysteriously wasn't logged into your system. He nodded to one of the agents, who produced a tablet showing the footage taken by the businessman at the quick stop. The color drained from Mercer's face. That doesn't change. It changes everything, Wilson said calmly, especially when combined with the financial audit our forensic accountants are conducting right now. Interesting spending habits you have, Sheriff. Maya rubbed her wrists as Wilkins reluctantly removed the handcuffs, his hands shaking slightly. Ms. Thompson, Wilson continued, you're free to go. One of my agents will take your statement, but not here. He glanced around the precinct with distaste. We'll arrange transportation home for you. This is outrageous, Mercer blustered, but there was no conviction in his voice. You can't just walk in here and... Actually, we can, Wilson cut him off, especially with the warrant signed by a federal judge. He handed Mercer a document. Your department is now under federal investigation for civil rights violations, evidence tampering, witness intimidation, and financial crimes. As Wilson spoke, more FBI agents entered the precinct, carrying boxes and equipment. The Westbrook officers looked on in disbelief as their world began crumbling around them. Maya followed Wilson outside, where a black SUV waited. As she climbed in, she looked back at the precinct, a place of terror just hours ago, now swarming with federal agents. She couldn't quite believe how quickly things had changed. Where are we going? She asked as the SUV pulled away. Somewhere safe, Wilson answered. Your brother is waiting. The safe house was a modest ranch-style home on the outskirts of town, surrounded by open fields that made it impossible to approach unseen. As Maya stepped from the SUV, the front door opened, and Darius Thompson emerged. At 6'2", with broad shoulders and the coiled alertness of a predator, Darius cut an imposing figure. But as he crossed the distance between them, his hard features softened. Without a word, he pulled Maya into a tight embrace. I'm sorry, he whispered against her hair. I should have been here sooner. Maya clung to him, finally allowing herself to feel the full weight of what she'd endured. You came. That's what matters. Inside, Maya was surprised to find Elijah and Denise waiting. Her son flew into her arms, and she held him close, tears streaming down her face. You're safe, she murmured, kissing his forehead. You're safe. Over. Elijah's shoulder. Maya's eyes met Denise's. Thank you for protecting him. Denise nodded. Family looks out for family, and in this community we're all family. As Elijah reluctantly let go, Maya turned to Darius, who stood watching the reunion with a rare softness in his eyes. "How did you do all this so quickly?" Darius guided her to a table where a group of people sat with laptops and communication equipment. "Maya, this is my team." He introduced them one by one: Carter Reed, Lisa Nguyen, Marcus Green, explaining how each had contributed to the operation. "We've been working non-stop since your call," Reed explained. "Mercer's department has been corrupt for years, but they were protected by political connections and intimidation. No one could get close enough to gather proper evidence. Until they messed with the wrong family," Nguyen added with a smile. Green pointed to his laptop screen. "We've traced financial irregularities going back 10 years. Mercer and his inner circle have been skimming from seized assets, taking bribes, to look the other way on drug shipments, and extorting local businesses. And that's just the beginning," Darius said, pulling up a chair for Maya. "Once we started digging, we found a pattern of false arrests targeting primarily black citizens, people who couldn't fight back, people who were vulnerable." Maya thought of Janine and the other women in that holding cell. "How many people?" "Hundreds," Reed answered grimly. "Some were coerced into guilty pleas for crimes they didn't commit. Some are still in prison." "We're working with the Department of Justice now," Darius explained. "This isn't just about you anymore, Maya. It's about dismantling an entire system of corruption." Maya absorbed this information, a mix of emotions washing over her: relief at her own freedom, rage at what had been happening in her community, determination to see justice done. "What happens next?" she asked. Darius's expression hardened. Phase 2. Sheriff Cole Mercer paced his office, phone pressed to his ear. "I don't care what it takes. Make this go away." State Senator James Whitaker's voice was tight with stress. "It's not that simple, Cole. The feds have a federal warrant. Judge Palmer can't block it." "Then find someone who can," Mercer hissed. "We all go down if this continues. Remember that." He ended the call and slammed his fist against the desk. Everything was unraveling. FBI agents were combing through every inch of the precinct, seizing computers, files, and evidence. Most of his officers were being questioned. Tate and Wilkins had been taken away in handcuffs after agents found the drugs they routinely used to plant on suspects. A knock at his door made him look up. Agent Wilson stood there, his calm demeanor more unsettling than any show of aggression would have been. "Your turn for questioning, Sheriff," Wilson said. Mercer straightened his uniform, grasping at the last shreds of his authority. "I have nothing to hide." "Then you won't mind explaining these," Wilson replied, placing photographs on the desk. Images of Mercer meeting with known drug traffickers, accepting envelopes, shaking hands with criminals. Mercer's blood ran cold. These were taken with a long-range lens from positions that would have required military-grade surveillance equipment, the kind of equipment only someone with Special Forces background would have access to. "Who is Maya Thompson's brother?" Mercer asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Wilson's smile was cold. "Someone you really should have left alone." At that moment, Mercer's phone buzzed with a text message. It was from an unknown number, containing just 4 words. "This is only beginning." Looking up, Mercer saw a figure through his office window, a yatu, tall, broad-shouldered man in civilian clothes, watching him from across the street. Though they had never met, Mercer knew instantly who it was. The man held Mercer's gaze for a long moment, then turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Sheriff Cole Mercer, who had terrorized an entire community for years, felt something he had never expected to experience: fear, pure, undiluted fear. At the safe house, Maya sat beside her brother on the porch, watching as Elijah played basketball with Reed in the driveway. Her body still ached from her ordeal, but her spirit was healing. "Mercer won't go down easily," she said. "He has connections." "Had connections," Darius corrected. "Amazing how quickly political allies disappear when federal indictments are in the air." Maya studied her brother's profile. "You didn't just call in a favor with the FBI, did you? This is bigger." Darius was silent for a moment. Let's just say I reminded some people in Washington that justice shouldn't depend on who you know or what color your skin is. What about the other victims? The women I met in that cell? Already being processed for release, Darius assured her. And our legal team is preparing class action suits against the county. No one's going to sweep this under the rug. Maya leaned her head against her brother's shoulder, overwhelmed with gratitude yet haunted by how easily her life could have been destroyed. I was lucky, she said softly. I had you. But how many don't? Darius put his arm around her. That's why this can't stop with Mercer. The system that protected him needs to change. As they watched Elijah sink a perfect jump shot, both siblings felt the weight of this truth. Maya's ordeal was ending, but the fight for justice was just beginning. And for the corrupt officers of Westbrook, the nightmare was only now taking shape. A nightmare orchestrated by a Delta Force commander who had faced down terrorists and warlords across the globe, but who had never confronted an enemy that infuriated him more than those who had dared to harm his family. The morning sun cast long shadows across Sheriff Mercer's office as he paced the floor, phone pressed to his ear. 3 days had passed since the FBI had descended on his precinct, and his carefully constructed kingdom was crumbling around him. I don't care what it costs, he hissed into the phone. Find out who this Darius Thompson really is and what he's capable of. On the other end of the line, his contact at the State Bureau of Investigation sounded nervous. Cole, you don't understand. This guy's file is redacted to hell and back. Delta Force isn't just special forces, it's the elite of the elite. Black ops, counterterrorism, high-value targets. The missions these guys run don't officially exist. Mercer stopped pacing. So he's dangerous. More than dangerous. He's got medals the public doesn't even know exist, and now he's called in every favor he's owed. The Attorney General's office, the FBI, even people at the Pentagon, they're all coming for you. Mercer's jaw tightened. No one is untouchable in this game. Everyone has a weakness. Did you hear what I just said? The Pentagon. His weakness is his sister, Mercer interrupted. And that kid of hers. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Cole, don't do anything stupid. These people can make you disappear. No, Mercer said coldly. They've made a critical mistake. They've left me alive and with nothing to lose. He ended the call and tossed the phone onto his desk. Deputy Tate and Officer Wilkins had been released on bail, part of Mercer's network of corruption still functioning despite the federal scrutiny. They sat across from him now, both looking haggard and afraid. The feds seized everything, Tate said. They're going through every case, every arrest. Let them look, Mercer replied dismissively. Paper trails can disappear. Witnesses can recant. Judges can be persuaded. This feels different, Wilkins said, fidgeting with his watch. My lawyer says they've got surveillance footage, financial records going back years. Mercer leaned forward, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Are you losing your nerve, Brad? Wilkins swallowed hard. No, sir. I'm just saying, I'm not interested in what you're just saying. Mercer cut him off. I'm interested in loyalty, in whether I can count on you two to do what needs to be done. The two officers exchanged glances. Despite their fear, they knew they were already implicated. Their fates were tied to Mercer's. What's the plan? Tate asked finally. Mercer smiled, a cold expression that never reached his eyes. First, we call in reinforcements. He picked up a burner phone, one not connected to the department, and dialed a number from memory. When the call connected, he spoke just 3 words. I need help. The voice that answered was smooth, almost casual. That'll be expensive, Sheriff. Money's not an issue, Mercer replied. But timing is. Tonight. Consider it done. After ending the call, Mercer turned back to his deputies. Now we need to get ahead of the narrative, plant the seeds of doubt. How? Wilkins asked. By turning Thompson into a threat. Mercer pulled out a folder containing everything they'd managed to gather on Darius Thompson in the past 72 hours. We issue a statement about a dangerous military operative with possible PTSD interfering in legitimate police business. We suggest he's unstable, potentially violent. Tate nodded slowly, catching on. Make the public afraid of him rather than us. Exactly, Mercer said. And then we reach out to my contacts at the Chronicle. Plant a story about a witch hunt against hard-working law enforcement, orchestrated by federal bureaucrats with a political agenda. Will that be enough? Wilkins asked skeptically. Mercer's expression darkened. It's just the beginning. By tomorrow, Maya Thompson will regret ever having called her brother. Darius Thompson stood at the window of the safe house, scanning the perimeter out of habit. Though the property looked peaceful in the afternoon light, his instincts told him to remain vigilant. 15 years in Delta Force had taught him that the most dangerous moment often came when the enemy appeared to be in retreat. Behind him, in the living room that had been converted into an operations center, his team worked with focused intensity. Screens displayed surveillance footage, financial records, and personnel files. A digital map of Westbrook showed points of interest: the police precinct, courthouse, judge's home, and various businesses connected to Mercer's network. "We've got something," Carter Reed called out, looking up from his laptop. "Financial transfers. From an offshore account to a private security firm based in Atlanta. 3 separate payments in the last 12 hours, totaling $500,000. Darius moved to look over Reed's shoulder. "Mercer, the account traces back to shell companies we've already linked to him, and the security firm is Phoenix Tactical." Darius's expression hardened. "Mercenaries." Lisa Nguyen looked up from her own screen. "Phoenix Tactical is led by Eric Donovan, former Army Ranger dishonorably discharged after allegations of civilian casualties in Afghanistan. They've worked as security consultants in conflict zones and for wealthy clients with questionable reputations." "How many operators?" Darius asked. "Based on the payment size, I'd estimate a team of 6 to 8, Reed answered. Darius nodded grimly. "Mercer's bringing in hired guns. He's desperate." "Should we alert the FBI?" Marcus Green asked. "Not yet," Darius decided. "Agent Wilson has been effective, but bureaucracy will slow down any response. By the time they get approval for additional resources, it could be too late." He turned to study the map again. "Mercer knows we're protecting Maya and Elijah. He'll likely target them first, thinking they're our vulnerability." "He's not wrong," Reed observed quietly. "No," Darius agreed. "Which is why we need to evacuate them immediately." He pulled out his phone and dialed Maya's number. When she answered, he didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Pack essentials for you and Elijah. 5 minutes. We're moving." "What's happening?" Maya asked, her voice instantly alert. "Mercer's escalating. I'll explain when I get there." After ending the call, Darius turned to his team. "Reed, you and I will extract Maya and Elijah. Nguyen, keep monitoring communications. I want to know when these mercenaries arrive and where they go. Green, coordinate with Wilson. Tell him we have credible intelligence about a threat, but keep the details vague." As they moved into action, Darius checked his sidearm, a habit from countless missions. This wasn't some remote desert or jungle. This was American soil, his sister's hometown. But the stakes felt just as high as any combat operation he'd led. "Darius," Reed said quietly, "if we engage with these mercenaries—" "We follow rules of engagement," Darius finished firmly. "Non-lethal options first. But make no mistake, these men are coming to harm my family. I won't let that happen." Determination in his voice left no room for debate. Reed nodded, understanding perfectly. He'd served with Darius long enough to know that while the commander was methodical and disciplined, he was utterly relentless when protecting those he cared about. "Let's move," Darius ordered. Maya Thompson moved through her small apartment, quickly gathering essentials for herself and Elijah. After their release from custody, they'd returned home rather than staying at the safe house, wanting some semblance of normalcy. Now, that decision felt dangerously naive. "Mom, what's going on?" Elijah asked, watching her pack with growing concern. "Your uncle needs us to go somewhere safer for a while," Maya explained, trying to keep her voice steady. "Just grab some clothes, and your schoolwork." Elijah hesitated. "Is it because of the police? Are they coming back?" Maya stopped packing and faced her son, placing her hands on his shoulders. "I promised I'd always be honest with you, right?" Elijah nodded solemnly. "Your uncle believes Sheriff Mercer might try to hurt us to get back at him. But," she continued quickly, seeing fear flash across Elijah's face. Darius won't let that happen. Neither will I. Elijah processed this, then straightened his shoulders, a gesture so reminiscent of Darius that it made Maya's heart ache. I'm not afraid, he said, though his voice wavered slightly. Maya pulled him into a hug. It's okay to be afraid, baby. Brave people feel fear too. They just don't let it stop them. A knock at the door made them both freeze. Maya checked her watch. Darius wasn't due for another 15 minutes. Stay here, she whispered to Elijah, guiding him toward the bathroom. Lock the door. Once Elijah was hidden, Maya approached the front door cautiously. Who is it? She called. Ms. Thompson, came a female voice. I'm Detective Sarah Miller with the State Bureau of Investigation. I need to speak with you about the case against Sheriff Mercer. Maya hesitated, instinct telling her something wasn't right. Through the peephole, she could see a woman in professional attire holding up what appeared to be a badge, but something about her posture seemed off. I'm not available right now, Maya called back. Please contact my lawyer. There was a pause, then the woman's voice hardened. Ms. Thompson, this is a matter of public safety. Open the door immediately. Maya backed away, reaching for her phone, to call Darius. Before she could dial, a tremendous crash shook the apartment as the door was kicked in. The detective entered first, followed by two men in tactical gear, faces obscured by balaclavas. Maya turned to run, but one of the men moved with practiced efficiency, catching her before she could reach the hallway. She fought back, kicking and scratching, training from a self-defense class momentarily surprising her attacker. Elijah, run, she screamed. Fire escape. As the bathroom door opened and Elijah bolted toward the bedroom window, the woman aimed a taser at Maya and fired. Maya's body convulsed as electricity coursed through her, and she collapsed to the floor. Through waves of pain, she saw one of the men grab Elijah as he tried to climb out the window. No, she gasped. Leave him alone. The woman approached, looking down at Maya with cold detachment. Nothing personal, Ms. Thompson. Just business. She raised a syringe, and as the needle pierced Maya's skin, darkness swept over her consciousness, like a tide. Her last thought before the sedative took hold was of Darius. He would come. He always did. But would it be in time? Darius knew something was wrong the moment he turned onto Maya's street. The block was too quiet, the usual pedestrian traffic absent. He slowed the SUV, scanning for surveillance, potential threats, or any sign of disturbance. Something's off, Reed said beside him, clearly sensing the same wrongness. Darius tapped his earpiece. Nguyen, status report. Lisa's voice came through clearly. Thermal imaging from the surveillance drone shows no movement in Maya's apartment, but there was activity approximately 20 minutes ago. 3 heat signatures entered, then left with 2 more. Ice formed in Darius's veins. They got to them first. He accelerated suddenly, closing the distance to Maya's building. As they pulled up, both men immediately spotted the splintered doorframe of the main entrance. Stay alert, Darius ordered, drawing his sidearm as they exited the vehicle. This could be an ambush. They moved with the synchronized precision of soldiers who had conducted countless raids together, covering angles, communicating with subtle gestures. Inside the building, they took the stairs rather than the elevator, approaching Maya's 3rd floor, apartment with weapons ready. The apartment door hung askew on broken hinges. Darius entered first, sweeping the main room while Reed covered the hallway. Signs of struggle were evident. Overturned furniture, Maya's phone on the floor, a small splash of blood on the carpet. Clear, Darius called after checking the bedroom. Clear, Reed echoed from the bathroom. Darius knelt by the bloodstain, touching it gently. Still tacky. Recent. He forced down the rage building inside him, channeling it into cold, tactical focus. They knew we were coming, he said. This was timed to beat us here. Reed was examining a syringe discarded near the couch. Sedative, most likely. Professional job. Darius activated his earpiece again. Nguyen, track all vehicles that left this area in the last 30 minutes, and get me everything on Phoenix Tactical, known associates, properties, Safe houses. Already. On it, Nguyen replied. And Darius? The Chronicle just published an article calling into question the federal investigation. They're painting Mercer as a victim of overreach and you as a potentially unstable military operative with a grudge. He's playing defense and offense simultaneously, Darius observed, trying to sway public opinion while taking hostages. Reed looked grim. This is getting complicated fast. Maybe it's time to bring in more resources. Darius considered this, weighing options with the same methodical precision he applied to combat decisions. Call Wilson. Tell him Maya and Elijah have been abducted by what we believe are mercenaries hired by Mercer. But make it clear, we're not standing down. As Reed made the call, Darius moved to the window, looking out at the city where his sister had built a life. She'd chosen to stay in Westbrook despite its problems, committed to serving its people as a nurse, raising her son to be strong and compassionate in a place that didn't always value those qualities. And now she was in danger because of that choice. Because a corrupt sheriff believed he was above the law, beyond consequences. Darius's phone vibrated with an incoming text from an unknown number. The message contained only an image, Maya and Elijah unconscious, in what appeared to be an industrial setting. Below the image was a simple message: call off the investigation or they die. Darius stared at the screen, his expression unreadable. But inside something shifted, the disciplined commander giving way to something more primal, more dangerous. Mercer had crossed a line, one he would soon regret. Night had fallen over Westbrook, bringing with it a tense electric atmosphere. Downtown streets near the police precinct had been blockaded, squad cars positioned at major intersections. Officers who remained loyal to Mercer patrolled in pairs, weapons visible, a show of force meant to intimidate. Inside an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town, Maya Thompson slowly regained consciousness. Her head throbbed, mouth dry from the sedative. As her vision cleared, she took in her surroundings: concrete floors, rusted machinery, high windows letting in minimal moonlight. Her hands were bound to a metal chair, tight enough to cut into her wrists. "Mom?" Elijah's frightened voice came from beside her. Maya turned to see her son similarly restrained in a chair a few feet away. His face was streaked with tears, but his eyes showed the Thompson resilience. "I'm here, baby," she assured him, trying to keep her voice steady. "Are you hurt?" Elijah shook his head. "They didn't hurt me, just tied me up when I tried to run." Maya felt a surge of pride through her fear. "That's my brave boy." "How touching," came a cold voice from the shadows. Sheriff Cole Mercer stepped into the pool of light cast by a single overhead lamp. He looked different out of uniform, more ordinary but somehow more menacing. "What do you want, Mercer?" Maya demanded, struggling to keep the tremor from her voice. Mercer circled them slowly, like a predator assessing its prey. "Originally, just to teach you a lesson about respecting authority. Now?" He shrugged. "Now I want my life back. The life your brother is trying to destroy." "You destroyed it yourself," Maya shot back. "When you decided to be corrupt, when you decided to terrorize people instead of protecting them." Mercer's face darkened. "You have no idea what it takes to keep order in a place like Westbrook. Sometimes lines get crossed for the greater good." "Is that what you tell yourself when you're planting evidence? When you're taking bribes?" Maya asked, her fear giving way to anger. "What greater good were you serving when you had your deputies harass me in front of my son?" Mercer didn't answer directly. Instead, he pulled out his phone, holding it up to show Maya a photo of Darius. "Your brother, the big war hero. Did you know what you were doing when you called him? Did you understand the forces you were unleashing?" "I knew exactly what I was doing," Maya said firmly. "I was calling someone who believes in justice." "The sir," laughed, a harsh sound without humor. "Justice? There's no such thing. There's only power and those too weak to seize it." He pocketed his phone. "Your brother may be powerful in his world, but this is my town, and he's about to learn what happens to outsiders who interfere." He nodded to someone in the shadows, and a woman stepped forward, the same one who had posed as a detective at Maya's door. "Keep them secure," Mercer ordered. I'll be back after I've dealt with their would-be rescuer. As Mercer turned to leave, Maya called after him. You're making a mistake, Sheriff. You have no idea what my brother is capable of. Mercer paused at the door. Maybe not, but neither does he know what I'm capable of. With that ominous statement, he disappeared into the darkness. The woman checked Maya and Elijah's restraints, then took up position by the door, her hand resting casually on the holstered gun at her hip. Maya leaned toward Elijah, keeping her voice low. Don't worry, Uncle Darius will find us. Elijah nodded, struggling to be brave. I know. Thompson family never breaks a promise. At Maya's apartment, Darius had transformed the living room into a tactical command center. Screens displayed satellite imagery, building layouts, and surveillance feeds. His team, now expanded to include Agent Wilson and a select group of FBI tactical specialists, worked with urgent precision. The warehouse district makes the most sense for a hostage situation, Wilson was saying, indicating an area on the digital map. Isolated, multiple exit routes, difficult to surveil. Agreed, Darius said. Nguyen, what do we have on properties connected to Mercer or Phoenix Tactical? Lisa swiped through her tablet. Mercer's brother-in-law owns 3 buildings in that area through a shell corporation. One of them, an old manufacturing plant, showed unusual electrical usage in the past 24 hours. Darius zoomed in on the building in question. That's it. 3 stories, multiple access points, reasonable defensive position. My team can have the building surrounded in 30 minutes, Wilson offered. Too obvious, Darius countered. Mercer will have lookouts. The moment they spot a police or FBI presence, Maya and Elijah become expendable. Reed studied the building schematics. We need a 2-phase approach. Small infiltration team first to locate and secure the hostages, followed by the main force, to apprehend Mercer and his mercenaries. Darius nodded in agreement. Reed, you and I will lead the infiltration. Wilson, have your team ready to move in on our signal. This isn't a military operation in hostile territory, Wilson pointed out. We have procedures for hostage situations. With all due respect, Agent, Darius replied. This is exactly like hostile territory. These aren't ordinary criminals. They're trained mercenaries with military backgrounds, led by a desperate man with nothing to lose. Wilson hesitated, then nodded. You have operational lead until the hostages are secured. Then we do this by the book. Agreed, Darius said. He turned to the team. We move in 1 hour, and everyone needs to understand. Mercer isn't just trying to save himself anymore. He's sending a message, making an example of my family. All the more reason to do this right, Wilson said quietly. Darius checked his watch. Let's gear up. Sheriff Mercer paced the upper floor of the warehouse, watching as deputies Tate and Wilkins coordinated with the mercenaries from Phoenix Tactical. The hired guns were professional, setting up defensive positions, establishing communication, protocols, checking their weapons with practiced efficiency. Thermal imaging is active, reported the mercenary leader, Eric Donovan. We'll have advance warning of any approach. Mercer nodded, trying to project confidence he no longer felt. Events had spiraled far beyond what he'd anticipated. What had started as a routine intimidation of a black motorist had somehow escalated into a standoff with federal agents and a Delta Force commander. What if this doesn't work? Tate asked nervously. What if we can't stop them? Then we have a fallback plan, Mercer said grimly. The evidence I've gathered over the years, insurance you might call it, dirt on every judge, politician, and business leader in the county. If I go down, everyone goes down. Wilkins looked skeptical. Will that be enough? Before Mercer could answer, Donovan approached with a tablet displaying thermal imagery of the perimeter. We have movement. 2 heat signatures approaching from the northeast. They're using the drainage channel for cover. Mercer smiled thinly. Right on schedule. Positions everyone. As his men moved to their assigned locations, Mercer descended to the main floor where Maya and Elijah were being held. Looks like your brother decided to play hero after all, he told Maya. Shame he's walking into a trap. Maya met his gaze, steadily. You still don't understand who you're dealing with, do you? Mercer was about to respond when the lights went out, plunging the warehouse into darkness. Emergency generators kicked in seconds later, but the damage was done. Panic had already begun to spread among Mercer's men. "What happened?" he demanded into his radio. "Power's been cut," came Donovan's tense reply, "and our communications are being jammed. Someone's—" The radio went silent. Above them, the sound of breaking glass was followed by the distinctive pop of flashbang grenades. Mercer drew his weapon, suddenly aware that his carefully planned trap had been turned against him. "Everyone to your positions. They're coming in from above." But the attack from the roof was a diversion. As Mercer's men focused upward, shadows moved across the main floor, swift, silent, lethal. Two figures in tactical gear neutralized the guards near Maya and Elijah with practiced efficiency, using non-lethal takedowns that left the men unconscious before they could raise an alarm. Darius reached Maya first, while Reed secured Elijah. "Are you hurt?" Darius asked, quickly cutting her restraints. "No," Maya whispered. "But Mercer is up there. He has at least a dozen men." Darius helped her to her feet. "Stay low. We're getting you out first." But as they moved toward the exit, a spotlight suddenly illuminated them from above. "Commander Thompson," Mercer called out, his voice echoing through the cavernous space. "I was wondering when you'd make your appearance." Darius pushed Maya behind him, assessing the tactical situation in an instant. Mercer stood on a catwalk, 20 feet above, flanked by Tate and Wilkins. Other armed men were positioned strategically around the upper level. "It's over, Mercer," Darius called back. "The building is surrounded by federal agents. Your mercenaries are being neutralized as we speak. There's no way out." Mercer laughed, the sound tinged with desperation. "Maybe not for me, but I'm thinking I'll at least have the satisfaction of watching you die first." He raised his weapon, aiming directly at Darius. Before he could fire, the warehouse doors burst open, and FBI tactical teams swarmed in, led by Agent Wilson. "FBI, drop your weapons! Everyone on the ground now!" Chaos erupted as Mercer's men realized they were outmatched. Some surrendered immediately. Others opened fire, creating a deadly crossfire above the warehouse floor. In the confusion, Mercer turned and fled toward a rear exit, Tate and Wilkins following close behind. Darius spotted their escape attempt. "Reed, get Maya and Elijah out," he ordered. "I'm going after Mercer." Without waiting for a response, Darius moved through the firefight with the fluid grace of a predator, using support columns for cover as he made his way to the stairs leading to the catwalk. Years of combat experience guided his movements, each step precise, each decision instantaneous. He reached the upper level just as Mercer and his deputies were disappearing through an emergency exit. Darius followed, emerging onto a narrow fire escape that led to the roof. Mercer was halfway up the metal stairs when he sensed Darius behind him. He wheeled around, firing wildly. The shots missed, ricocheting off the railings with metallic pings. "Doesn't have to end this way," Darius called out, his voice calm despite the circumstances. "Surrender now, and you'll face justice in a courtroom, not a body bag." "Justice?" Mercer spat the word like a curse. "There's no justice for men like me in this world, only winners and losers." He fired again, forcing Darius to take cover. When Darius looked up, Mercer had reached the roof, Tate and Wilkins close behind. Darius moved up the fire escape with controlled urgency, emerging onto the flat rooftop in time to see the three men running toward a waiting helicopter. "Stop!" Darius shouted over the roar of the rotors. "Federal agents are on all sides." Indeed, spotlights from FBI vehicles now illuminated the roof from multiple angles. Bullhorns commanded surrender. There was nowhere left to run. Tate and Wilkins seemed to realize this, slowly raising their hands in surrender. But Mercer, seeing his world collapsing around him, made one final, desperate choice. He turned toward Darius, weapon raised, eyes wild with the knowledge that it was truly over. "This is your fault," he snarled. "All of it." Darius stood his ground, making no move toward his own weapon. "No, Sheriff. This is the consequence of your choices. Nothing more." For a moment, the two men locked eyes across the rooftop. The corrupt sheriff who had terrorized a community, and the warrior who had come to end his reign. Then Mercer's finger tightened on the trigger. Before he could fire, shots rang out from FBI snipers positioned on adjacent buildings. Mercer jerked back, his weapon falling from lifeless fingers as he collapsed to the rooftop. Darius looked down at the man who had caused so much pain, feeling not satisfaction but a grim sense of closure. The precinct would fall. The system Mercer had corrupted would be dismantled, but the damage he had done to countless lives could never be undone. As FBI agents swarmed the roof, securing Tate and Wilkins, Darius turned away. His mission now was to return to his sister and nephew, to family, to healing, to what mattered most. The battle was over. But the war against corruption and injustice? That would continue long after this night. 3 months after the warehouse confrontation, the Westbrook County Courthouse stood as a fortress of tension. Media vans lined the street outside, reporters jostling for position as spectators and protesters gathered on the stone steps. Some carried signs demanding justice for Mercer's victims. Others, mainly officers from neighboring counties, stood in silent support of law enforcement under attack. Inside courtroom 3, Maya Thompson sat rigidly in the front row, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Beside her, Elijah fidgeted with his tie, a young man forced to grow up too quickly. Darius sat on Elijah's other side, his military posture unchanged despite the civilian suit he wore. His presence alone seemed to create a protected space around his family. "All rise," the bailiff called out as Judge Eleanor Winters entered the courtroom. Unlike her predecessor, Judge Palmer, who had recused himself after his connections to Mercer came to light, Judge Winters had been appointed specifically for this high-profile case. Her reputation for impartiality and strict adherence to the law made her impossible to intimidate or influence. "Be seated," she ordered, adjusting her glasses as she reviewed the documents before her. Case number 2024 CR 7851, United States v. Logan Tate and Bradford Wilkins. Maya's eyes shifted to the defense table, where the 2 former deputies sat beside their attorneys. Both men looked diminished in their dark suits, stripped of the uniforms and badges that had once given them power. Tate's face remained defiant, but Wilkins seemed haunted, his eyes constantly darting around the courtroom as if expecting retribution from every corner. The prosecutor, Assistant U.S. Attorney James Harmon, approached the podium. "Your Honor, the government is prepared to present evidence that these defendants systematically violated the civil rights of citizens under color of law, falsified evidence, committed perjury, and engaged in a conspiracy to obstruct justice. The defense is prepared to show that my clients were following established departmental procedures and the direct orders of their superior officer," countered defense attorney William Stanley, a silver-haired man with the polished confidence of someone accustomed to defending the indefensible. Judge Winters nodded. "Very well. Opening statements." As Harmon began outlining the government's case, Maya found herself transported back to that night at the gas station. The casual cruelty, the smirks on the officers' faces, the feeling of utter helplessness as they dragged her away from her son. Her hands trembled at the memory, and Elijah, noticing, placed his hand over hers. "It's okay, Mom," he whispered. "We're winning." Maya squeezed his hand gratefully. At 13, he sometimes displayed wisdom beyond his years. The prosecution's opening statement painted a damning picture, not just of that single incident, but of a pattern spanning years. Names and dates flowed like a litany of suffering. Dozens of black citizens wrongfully arrested, evidence planted, lives destroyed through false charges. The courtroom fell silent as Harmon detailed how Tate and Wilkins had served as Mercer's primary enforcers in a system designed to terrorize and control. When the defense attorney rose, his strategy became immediately clear. "My clients were pawns," Stanley argued, gesturing sympathetically toward Tate and Wilkins. "Subordinate officers following the orders of a corrupt sheriff who's no longer here to face justice himself." Maya felt Darius stiffen beside her. The attempt to shift all blame to the deceased Mercer was as transparent as it was predictable. "Sheriff Mercer created a culture of fear within the department," Stanley continued. "Officers who questioned his methods found themselves assigned to the worst shifts, passed over for promotion, or worse." My clients were victims of a corrupt system, not its architects. Judge Winters interrupted. Mr. Stanley, while the court acknowledges the influence of chain of command, let's be clear. Following orders has not been a valid defense for criminal behavior since Nuremberg. A murmur rippled through the courtroom, quickly silenced by the bailiff's stern glare. The first week of trial focused on establishing the pattern of corruption. Former inmates testified about false arrests and planted evidence. Business owners described protection rackets run by the precinct. A forensic accountant meticulously traced the flow of money from drug traffickers through shell companies to the personal accounts of Mercer and his inner circle. On the trial's 8th day, Maya was called to testify. As she took the stand, she felt a peculiar calm settle over her. The fear that had paralyzed her that night at the gas station was gone, replaced by a steady determination to speak her truth. Harmon guided her gently through her account of the arrest, the fabricated charges, the threats against her son, and the physical abuse she suffered in custody. Her voice remained steady, her eyes occasionally meeting those of Tate and Wilkins across the courtroom. "Did either defendant ever express concern about how you were being treated?" Harmon asked. "No," Maya answered firmly. "They seemed to enjoy it." When Stanley rose for cross-examination, his approach was immediately aggressive. "Ms. Thompson, isn't it true that your brother is a military operative who essentially declared war on the Westbrook Police Department after your arrest?" "Objection," Harmon called out. "Relevance goes to bias and potential motive to exaggerate, Your Honor," Stanley argued. "I'll allow it," Judge Winters ruled. "The witness will answer." Maya straightened her shoulders. "My brother came to help me after I was wrongfully arrested and abused by these officers. He worked with federal authorities to expose corruption that had been hurting people in Westbrook for years. But he didn't follow proper channels, did he?" Stanley pressed. "He used military tactics against civilian law enforcement. He used his training to protect me and my son when we were kidnapped by mercenaries hired by Sheriff Mercer," Maya corrected calmly. "Every action he took was coordinated with the FBI." Stanley changed tactics. "Ms. Thompson, prior to your arrest, had you ever had encounters with law enforcement in Westbrook?" "Only professional ones. As a nurse at Memorial, I occasionally worked with officers when patients came in from accidents or violent incidents." "So you had no reason to believe officers would target you specifically, correct?" Maya paused, considering. "I had no personal reason. But as a black woman in Westbrook, I was aware of the department's reputation. Many in our community had experienced similar treatment." Stanley's expression hardened. "So you're alleging racial motivation based on community rumors?" "Objection," Harmon interjected. "Mischaracterizes the testimony." "Sustained," Judge Winters ruled. Stanley pressed on. "Ms. Thompson, isn't it possible that in the darkness, at a late hour, the officers genuinely believed your vehicle matched the description of a stolen car?" Maya met his gaze steadily. "No. My car is a 2015 Honda Civic. The officers claimed they were looking for a stolen vehicle but never specified what kind. They refused to check my registration properly. And when Deputy Tate searched me, he whispered, 'You people never learn.' That made his intentions quite clear." Stanley's cross-examination continued for hours, attempting to find inconsistencies in Maya's account or suggest she had embellished her experience for the lawsuit that had been filed against the county. But Maya remained unshakable, her testimony resonating with authenticity that even the most skilled attorney couldn't undermine. When she finally stepped down from the witness stand, Maya felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Regardless of the verdict, she had spoken her truth before the court and the community. No one could take that away from her. The following day brought the most damaging testimony yet, from Officer Brad Wilkins himself. In exchange for consideration at sentencing, Wilkins had agreed to testify against Tate and provide detailed information about the department's operations under Mercer. As Wilkins took the stand, avoiding eye contact with his former colleague, Tate's face darkened with fury and betrayal. The courtroom leaned forward collectively, sensing they were about to hear confessions that had been buried for years. "Officer Wilkins," Harmon began, Was there a policy or practice regarding how officers in the Westbrook Police Department were to interact with black citizens during traffic stops or other encounters? Wilkins shifted uncomfortably. Not officially in writing, but Sheriff Mercer made it clear. He wanted us to keep certain neighborhoods in check. That meant stopping black drivers for minor infractions or no reason at all, searching their vehicles, running their names for warrants, and if no evidence of wrongdoing was found, Wilkins stared at his hands. Sometimes we'd find something anyway. You mean you would plant evidence? Yes, Wilkins admitted, his voice barely audible. We kept drop guns and bags of drugs in our cruisers specifically for that purpose. A collective gasp rose from the gallery. Judge Winters called for order as Harmon continued. Was this practice used in the arrest of Maya Thompson? Yes, Wilkins confirmed. The drugs found in her wallet were planted. Her car was never suspected of being stolen. That was just an excuse to initiate contact. Why was Ms. Thompson targeted? That night, Wilkins finally looked up. Sheriff Mercer had a monthly quota, a certain number of arrests from certain neighborhoods. We were behind that month. Maya Thompson was just convenient. The casual cruelty of that statement hung in the air, devastating in its simplicity. Maya wasn't targeted for anything she'd done. She was simply a black woman in the wrong place at the wrong time, reduced to a statistic to fill a quota. As Wilkins detailed other cases where evidence had been planted, confessions coerced, and witnesses intimidated, the full scope of the department's corruption emerged in horrifying detail. Years of systematic abuse had been justified as maintaining order, while actually serving to terrorize an entire community. Tate's attorney attempted to paint Wilkins as a liar seeking to save himself, but the damage was done. Too many details. Aligned with other testimony, too many witnesses had corroborated the pattern. In his desperate attempt to discredit the mounting evidence, Stanley called character witnesses, fellow officers who testified to Tate's professionalism and community, members who praised the order the department had maintained. But their testimonies rang hollow against the mountain of evidence and first-hand accounts of abuse. On the final day of the trial, as closing arguments approached, Maya sat with Darius and Elijah, watching as Tate finally took the stand in his own defense. Unlike Wilkins, who had appeared haunted by his actions, Tate remained defiantly unapologetic. I served this community for 15 years, he insisted. I put my life on the line daily to maintain order in neighborhoods where law enforcement wasn't welcome. Sometimes tough decisions had to be made. Harmon's cross-examination was surgical. Officer Tate, would you consider fabricating evidence against an innocent mother a tough decision? I acted according to department procedure, Tate repeated stubbornly. Was physically assaulting a handcuffed woman also department procedure? Harmon pressed, displaying photos of Maya's bruises. Tate's facade finally cracked. Look, some people only respect force. That's the reality of policing certain communities. Certain communities, Harmon repeated. You mean black communities? Correct. I didn't say that, Tate backpedaled. You didn't have to, Harmon replied coldly. Your actions have said it for years. As closing arguments concluded and the jury began deliberations, Maya found herself oddly calm. Whatever the verdict, the truth had been exposed. Westbrook would never be the same. It took the jury just 5 hours to reach their decision. As the courtroom reassembled, Maya gripped Elijah's hand tightly. Darius sat perfectly still beside them, his posture relaxed but alert. On the count of conspiracy against rights under color of law, how do you find? Judge Winters asked the jury foreman. We find the defendant, Logan Tate, guilty, the foreman responded firmly. On the count of falsification of evidence, how do you find? Guilty. As the verdicts continued, guilty on all counts for both Tate and Wilkins, Maya felt tears sliding down her cheeks. Not tears of joy or vindication, but of release. The system that had nearly destroyed her life was finally facing consequences. When the courtroom emptied, reporters swarmed around Maya and Darius on the courthouse steps. Ms. Thompson, how do you feel about the verdict? Shouted one journalist. Maya took a deep breath before answering. This isn't just about me. It's about everyone who suffered under a corrupt system and never got justice. Today is a first step, but there's so much more work to do. As cameras flashed around them, Elijah stood tall beside his mother, his young face solemn but hopeful, and Darius, ever vigilant, watched over them both, the warrior who had fought a different kind of battle than he was trained for, but with the same unwavering commitment to protect what mattered most. Spring brought renewal to Westbrook. Cherry blossoms lined the streets, their delicate petals carpeting sidewalks where protesters had marched throughout the winter demanding systemic change. The morning air carried the promise of transformation, not just of season, but of community. Maya. Thompson stood on the steps of the newly renovated community center, watching volunteers set up for the day's event. 6 months had passed since the trial, and Westbrook was slowly healing from decades of corruption. "Nervous?" asked Denise Williams, appearing at Maya's side with a clipboard. Maya smiled. "A little. I never expected to be here doing this." "You're exactly where you need to be," Denise assured her, squeezing her arm gently. Inside the main hall, rows of chairs faced a small stage where a podium had been set up. Posters around the room displayed information about citizens' rights, law enforcement accountability, and community resources. At a table near the entrance, volunteers distributed informational packets and registered attendees for future workshops. This was the official launch of the Thompson Justice Initiative, a foundation Maya had established using part of the settlement money from her lawsuit against Westbrook County. Its mission: to support victims of police misconduct, advocate for policy reforms, and rebuild trust between law enforcement and the community. Elijah appeared from a side room, carefully carrying a stack of programs. At 14, he had grown, taller in the past months, his features maturing from boy to young man. The trauma of their ordeal had left its mark, but it had also sparked a passionate interest in justice and community activism. "Mom, the new police chief is here," he said, nodding toward the entrance. Maya turned to see Chief Alicia Foster arriving with several officers. Foster had been brought in from outside to rebuild the department after the federal investigation had resulted in the firing or resignation of over 20 officers. Her appointment, as both the first female and first black chief in Westbrook's history, symbolized the change sweeping through the county. "Chief Foster," Maya greeted her, extending her hand. "Thank you for coming." "Wouldn't miss it," Foster replied warmly. "Your foundation's work is exactly what this community needs to heal." The relationship between Maya and the new police leadership had started tentatively, understandable given her experience. But Foster had made genuine efforts to acknowledge past wrongs and implement meaningful reforms, from body cameras and civilian oversight to revamped training protocols emphasizing de-escalation and community engagement. As the hall filled with community members, local officials, and media, Maya retreated to a quiet corner to review her speech. The words had been carefully crafted over many drafts, seeking the delicate balance between acknowledging pain and fostering hope. A familiar presence appeared beside her, Darius impeccable in a dark suit that couldn't quite disguise his military bearing. "You're going to do great," he said simply. Maya looked up at her brother, emotion tightening her throat. After the trial, Darius had stayed in Westbrook longer than expected, helping establish security protocols for the foundation and serving as a silent guardian for Maya and Elijah as they rebuilt their lives. But tomorrow he would return to his duties, disappearing back into the classified world he inhabited. "I couldn't have done any of this without you," she said softly. Darius shook his head. "You would have found a way. Thompson family always does." "Will you at least consider my offer?" Maya asked. "The foundation could use someone with your expertise on a more permanent basis." A ghost of a smile touched Darius's lips. "My expertise is in eliminating threats, not building bridges." "I disagree," Maya countered. "You're better at both than you think." Before he could respond, Denise approached to indicate it was time to begin. Maya took a deep breath and moved toward the stage. The audience quieted as she took her place at the podium. Faces turned toward her, some familiar, others strangers, all united by a desire for change. In the front row sat those who had been closest to her journey: Elijah, watching with undisguised pride; Denise, nodding encouragement; Janine and other former inmates who had testified at the trial; Agent Wilson, representing the federal authorities who had helped bring down Mercer's empire; and Darius, standing at the back of the room, alert as always, but allowing himself to be present for this moment. 6 months ago, Maya began, her voice steady and clear. I stood in a courtroom and told my story. Today I stand before you not just as someone who survived a broken system, but as someone committed to fixing it. As she spoke about the Foundation's initiatives, legal support for victims, educational programs, policy advocacy, Maya noticed tears in some eyes, resolute nods from others. The shared experience of living under Mercer's corrupt regime had created an unexpected unity across racial and social divides. Everyone had suffered, though not equally. The Thompson Justice Initiative isn't about revenge or punishment, Maya continued. It's about transformation, about creating a community where no mother has to fear for her child during a routine traffic stop, where no officer feels pressured to choose between conscience and career, where justice truly means justice for all. After the formal presentation, as attendees mingled and explored the information booths, Maya found herself approached by a young patrol officer. She recognized him as one of the new recruits hired under Chief Foster's leadership. "Ms. Thompson," he said hesitantly, "I just wanted to say, what happened to you is why I became an officer, to make sure things like that don't happen again." Maya studied him, earnest, nervous, clearly wrestling with the weight of the badge he carried. "What's your name, officer?" "Jenkins, ma'am." "Michael Jenkins. Officer Jenkins, the fact that you're here having this conversation gives me hope. This work requires all of us, community members and law enforcement alike." Later, as the event wound down, Maya found Elijah deep in conversation with Agent Wilson. Her son had developed an almost hero worship of the FBI agent who had helped free them from the warehouse. "Mom," Elijah called excitedly as she approached, "Agent Wilson says I could apply for the FBI internship program when I'm in college." Maya raised an eyebrow at Wilson, who shrugged somewhat apologetically. "He's got a sharp mind," Wilson said, "and a personal understanding of why justice matters. We need more of that in federal law enforcement." As Elijah continued asking questions about the FBI's work, Maya drifted outside for a moment of quiet. The evening air was cool and refreshing after the crowded hall. She found Darius already there, gazing out at the city skyline. "Successful launch," he commented. "You should be proud." "I am," Maya agreed. "But there's still so much to do." "There always is," Darius said. "That's why the work never really ends." They stood in companionable silence for a moment, the distant sounds of the city washing over them. "I've been thinking about your offer," Darius said finally. "About staying on with the Foundation." Maya turned to him, surprised. "And?" "I've arranged an extended leave. 6 months, possibly renewable. My team can handle things without me for a while." Joy bloomed in Maya's chest. "Elijah will be thrilled. He looks up to you so much." "The feeling is mutual," Darius replied. "That kid showed more courage throughout this ordeal than some soldiers I've commanded." "He gets it from his mother," came a voice from behind them. They turned to find Denise watching them with a knowing smile. "The community center is closing up, but several folks are heading over to Ruby's Diner to continue the conversation. You, too, should join us." As they walked back inside to collect Elijah, Maya thought about the long journey that had brought them here. From a terrifying night at a gas station to the launch of a foundation that might actually change lives. From being victims of a corrupt system to becoming architects of its replacement. The road ahead would not be easy. Systemic change never was. Old habits and prejudices wouldn't disappear overnight, and there would always be those who resisted progress. But looking around at the diverse group of people who had gathered today, community activists, reformed officers, everyday citizens committed to a better Westbrook, Maya felt something she hadn't expected: genuine hope. Later that evening, as they sat in a crowded booth at Ruby's diner, surrounded by animated discussions about next steps and future initiatives, Elijah leaned over to his mother. "We did it, didn't we?" he asked quietly. "We made things better." Maya looked at her son, no longer the frightened boy who had watched helplessly as she was dragged away, but a young man with purpose and conviction. She thought about all they had endured, all they had learned, all they had accomplished together. "We've started," she corrected gently. "And that's the most important part." Across the table, Darius caught her eye and raised his coffee cup in a subtle toast. Maya smiled, Beck lifting her own cup to meet his. The Thompson siblings, the healer and the warrior, united in a different kind of battle than either had imagined, and in that moment, surrounded by new allies and old friends, Maya knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them, the same way they had faced Mercer in his corrupt precinct, together, with unwavering determination and the absolute conviction that justice was worth fighting for. Not just for themselves, but for everyone who had never had the chance to fight back. For everyone who would come after them. For a future where a late night stop at a gas station wouldn't change anyone's life forever. A future worth building, one day at a time. What would you do if the system meant to protect you became your greatest threat? Maya and Darius's story reminds us that justice requires both courage and sacrifice, sometimes from those we least expect. If this tale of accountability stirred something in you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that challenge our understanding of justice, family, and the power of standing up against corruption.